Okay. Is the microphone working well? Can people hear me okay? Thumbs up? There we go. Okay, great. So we have some questions today. First one is, hello Ajahn, my question is about, quote, feeling whole in Buddhism. Whole with a W, W-H-O-L-E, not a whole, feeling whole in Buddhism. Can you please explain, in your view, what this means and what it feels like to be in that level? Is it permanent state or temporary? And what are some practices to get to that state? Thank you very much. Well, I've never really seen in any of the teachings the talking about a goal of feeling whole. It's not a term that is often used, in my experience, in our tradition anyway. The Buddha talks about getting rid of, not getting rid of, but letting go of, some of the conditioned patterns of our mind that lead to a sense of disconnectedness or distraction or agitation, doubt. These are all kind of mind states that kind of make a person feel, not whole anyway, but agitated, distracted, doubtful, and contribute to a sense of scatteredness. And the teachings basically, as they come to the practices of settling the mind, working with these kinds of hindrances as they emerge, and learning how to cope with the hindrances by recognizing them, seeing what their effect is, particularly in the body, seeing the effects of them, looking to see how it is that they're arising and what seems to take place as they pass away, and the feeling that results when they pass away. This is all part of the investigation aspect of Dhamma, Dhammavicaya, is what it's called, investigation of Dhammas, so that we look at what's causing our natural sense of peacefulness, what causes it, what obstructs that from being there. So we work on looking to see the qualities that prevent us from feeling at peace and feeling good about things, and we work to recognize them and to let them go in different ways, and we work to just bring up things that help to offset them and that bring up more, I would say, wholesome rather than whole, wholesome conditions. In a sense that wholesome and whole come from that same root. Things that lead to well-being, a sense of well-being in a long-term sense, skillful sense of well-being. So it's just a gradual process, and you take it as different things arise. And the idea is to get familiar enough with your own patterns, and again, just allowing the attention to really dwell at the level of the body. Another aspect, I guess, one could say about feeling whole or feeling integrated is having the body and the mind in tune with each other, so that the body is a really great area. It's a place where all of our mental attitudes, emotions, obstructions, afflictions, they manifest in some way within the body, and that's how we can best know them. Because the body doesn't really lie. The body just has this, sense that it picks up on what's going on underneath, even if you're not consciously aware of it. The body picks up on it and registers in some way or another. So integrating the truth of what the body's telling you, and then letting the mental disturbance recognize that bodily experience. And sometimes a word or a description comes up in the mental realm that describes what's going on, that's preventing this sense of peace and well-being. And sometimes it doesn't, but the main thing is just to acknowledge its presence and work towards accepting that there's a lot in our experience that we can't prevent from happening. It's coming to terms with being a human being, that more or less it's a 50-50 realm of pleasant and unpleasant experience. And if we're always reacting to unpleasant experience by trying to avoid it, get away from it, annihilate it, pretend it's not there or distract ourselves, then we're disconnected, from what the reality is. If we're always chasing after things that we don't have, things that we want, pleasant experience, trying to sustain those over time, well, that becomes exhausting and it becomes unsustainable. It's kind of like a bottomless pit. So, these are all aspects of not being very well integrated with what reality tells us is happening. And if reality is telling us that, well, something unpleasant is here and there's a wish to get away from it, but, it's kind of an unavoidable circumstance, like some illnesses and certain strong mental habits that come back. Well, sometimes we have to experience the effects of those in a very gentle, aware kind of state of mind that isn't trying to push away, that isn't trying to get something else, but is just trying to understand what the truth of the situation is. And then there's that moment where we can choose how we react. And if we try and go through the same old habit patterns of, trying to create some sort of situation where we don't have to experience pain, where we don't have to experience difficulty, where we only have the pleasant, then we see how that is kind of a dead end. So gradually, just by being honest with ourselves and noticing that kind of sense of disconnect or disturbance in our mind, and trying to learn how to just be more accepting and to take action when it's appropriate, particularly, and when not to take action when it's not appropriate, restraining ourselves from reacting in ways that are just going to compound the problem by getting us further entangled and entwined. We can restrain ourselves and not be reactive. Or if we can see something that will bring up a wholesome state of mind, turning our attention to something useful, looking at something from a different perspective, then that sense of ease will come about. That's kind of what comes to my mind when I talk about feeling whole. It's kind of undoing the circumstances that make us feel disconnected and distracted and full of doubts and questions. Sometimes when you kind of ask the question here, is it permanent state or temporary? And what are some practices to get to that state? It kind of brings up a sense that maybe there are sometimes we have experiences with meditation where we can get very still and very quiet, very concentrated, very peaceful through how we're attending to our breath or some other object of meditation, and the mind moves into a very still, calm, very nice, very relaxed, contented state of mind. And if they are not necessarily based in strong insight or wisdom, then they're pretty fleeting and they're pretty much dependent on the circumstances that have caused them to arise, like being in a very quiet place with no distractions, nobody bothering you, nobody asking you for things, that you don't want to give. If you a very sterile environment, which can sometimes happen on retreats, then it can be very lovely and very peaceful. And it's also, can be an experience that is fleeting, just depending on the circumstances that give rise to it. So that's why we really emphasize not only the development of calm, composed mind through, kind of simplifying our lives and stepping back and entering a period of retreat like this, but also to integrate that into our experience of the world, to develop a real insight into how it is that whether we're on retreat or whether off retreat, if we pick up things with greed, hatred, and delusion, then that's not going to give us a very long-lasting sense of happiness. If we grasp onto a momentary state of well-being and get disappointed when it passes away, then we'll be disappointed. So we work towards really integrating the truths of, like Luang Por was talking about, anicca, and then also the other characteristics, dukkha, anatta, to see the transitoriness of all conditions and to work towards relinquishment of those for a very, very stable form of peace, which I guess in a way you could call being very whole. But it's not a state of becoming, it's a state of deconstructing the usual ways we fabricate our world around us, and allowing the peace of non-entanglement to become the supreme peace. Okay, question 2. Dear monks, I had a recurring experience yesterday that I've had on past retreats. While in a state of deep concentration, I began to experience a pulsating vibration in my body. The vibration moves up and down my body with a positive feeling tone. I've generally welcomed the experience in the past, but yesterday I became worried about it. Reason being is that I've had similar vibrations of lesser intensity come up in my body/brain during my daily life over the year since my last retreat. When the vibration happens in regular life, it doesn't have a positive feeling tone, and it impedes my mental clarity. It seems to me that experiences reached during meditation practice get, quote, stuck in my body, brain, and then replay themselves in normal life. My question, have you heard of anything like this occurring in other meditators? Any thoughts on how to resolve this stuck bodily experience? My apologies for the wordy question. Yeah, people have all sorts of different kinds of different experiences during deeper meditation, and many of them are really kind of unexplainable, and it generally is taught in our tradition not to give them too much attention or try to give them too much significance. What does this mean? Does this mean I'm in a state of super duper good concentration, or what? Is this a sign of impending enlightenment? All those kinds of things. So basically, just not to impute too much meaning onto them. The body is kind of a mysterious thing, and it can do all sorts of responses when there's different states of mind coming up. So, I would say just to notice the experience, not really impute much meaning to it. Ajahn Chah talks about some really very intense kinds of experiences like this, and coming in of them and out of them, and basically concluding that, well, it just was what it was. It is what it is, and not to give it too much attention or time or concern, it as much as it these kinds of repetitions of different energetics that the body goes through during meditation might repeat themselves, say, as you say, in between meditation retreats. I would just say that when they come up, just to take note of them and not to get too averse to them if they're unpleasant, but just to say, okay, well, this is just some sort of weird bodily energy thing that's arising. Don't really know exactly the reason. Feels kind of similar to what I was doing retreat, but it's not very pleasant. And to just kind of, if it's possible, turn your attention to whatever it is that you're doing and not give it, not play a whole lot into it, not feed it with any kind of fear or concern, as long as it's not causing you to, do anything harmful. Then just to note it as it arises, as it persists, and as it passes away, as all of these things will do if we don't feed into them and we don't buy into them or get worried about them. Okay, third question. What is the best way to pay respects to a monastic or a lay teacher? Well, I think, from my standpoint, the best way to pay respects to anybody who seems to be a teacher for you or a mentor or somebody who's even offered a bit of help is to just continue practicing in a good way and keep working on your own practice in a very sincere, dedicated way, because at some point you might be able to bring those skills to help other people as well, in addition to yourself. So, there are the usual ways of, even just giving feedback to a monk or a nun or a lay teacher by expressing appreciation in ways that are appropriate, ways of support. But really the best thing to do is to keep the best way to pay respect is to keep your precepts, keep on looking at your life, keep on increasing the wholesome states and qualities through diligence, and working on towards eliminating the unwholesome qualities of mind that are still causing obstruction. That's the best way to pay respects to someone who's helped you, I think. How do you make death a part of your life and meditation? How can we work towards having a peaceful death, noting that ill health can cause pain? Just by doing what you're doing, by asking this question, and is making it a regular reflection. Yes, there is ill health that usually comes along as we get older, or just not even as we all get older, even when we're young, we can experience ill health. And painfulness is part of having a human body and a human mind. Just working towards that kind of undoing the resistance to that reality, the denial that sometimes we all try and walk around in, saying that it shouldn't be this way. Well, if it shouldn't be this way, it wouldn't be this way. It's part of being a human being. It's part of being in nature. There are these causes and conditions of biology and psychology that that we have to live with. The natural laws of the body, the natural laws of the mind, and also the natural law of karma that helps to influence our experiences. So, just reflecting on that and noticing that when the resistance to illness or pain, mental or physical, when the resistance comes up, not not giving into that complaining mind, or that mind that says it isn't fair, because it may not be pleasant, but it is your reality, and acceptance is the way that we don't have to add another layer of dukkha to it, because a lot of the things that make illness and aging and death not peaceful is our resistance to it, and our non-acceptance of it. And we have to learn to be able to discern what kind of dukkha or pain, difficulty, is unavoidable, and then what kind is avoidable. And the kind that's avoidable is our reaction to situations. It's, most people know the story or the simile of the arrow and the second arrow. So it's like, someone is struck by an arrow and they experience the pain from that. And then the sorrow and the lamentation and the despair and the flailing and this shouldn't be happening, the mental reaction to the arrow is what's called the second arrow of painfulness that we don't need to experience. Once again, the oft-quoted saying of pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So we don't need to add that second arrow. But we can't avoid the first one, because we're just part of the human realm. And so just to make this a daily reflection, really, just reflecting on the aging of the body, if not your own, if you're still young and healthy, then looking around and seeing the world around us and realizing that someday that will be you, someday that will be me. And just constantly bringing that to mind, reflecting on that. And there's more involved and detailed death contemplations that one can find probably resources for, where you actually go through mental visualizations of the dying process, and to the point of the end of life, to give you even deeper insight on that. But just the more you have that kind of daily reflection on the inevitability of passing away, this body, these khandhas, the body and the feelings and the perceptions and the mental habits and sense consciousness, these are all things that fade and dissolve by the end of the lifetime of this particular body-mind experience. And certain impulses and inclinations then propel us on to the next existence. But this body and its inevitable demise is something that once we make that over and over and over again part of our daily reflection, gives rise. It's not a morbid kind of contemplation at all. It's a very freeing contemplation, because if we're not attached to this flesh and this blood and these bodily components, and we're not attached to the mind and the intellect and our abilities to think clearly, because that's one of the hard ones for most people to let go of. Oftentimes it's easy to more easily possible to accept the demise and the death of this body, because it's always reminding us of that. But how many times do you hear people say, well, as long as I don't lose my mind, as long as I can stay clear, then I'll be happy. But if that happens, well, that's the end of it. I don't want to have to experience that. But that happens too. People lose their cognitive abilities. But cognitive abilities and the intellect isn't a place where we find freedom. We don't find. It's not the personality, it's not the thinking mind, it's not the body that experiences the kind of ultimate freedom that the Buddha talks about. We're not going to liberate our personality. We just liberate our heart from the grasping and clinging to our false refuges. And death contemplation really helps to bring that to the fore of what it is. It's really contemplating, in a sense. Contemplating death is contemplating who we are not. And once we come to that very clear, comprehensive, deep understanding of who we are not, then a more sublime kind of understanding of our experience just falls into place naturally. We're not looking to find out who we are, per se. We're just looking to discover very deeply who we're not. And death contemplation is a great way to do that. Dear Ajahn, I have heard Bhikkhu Bodhi say that to be a Buddhist you need to have faith in the enlightenment of the Buddha. I've also heard some Theravada practitioners downplay quote-unquote faith and focus on the rationality of Buddhism, claiming that what's needed is to have, quote, confidence in the teachings, to take the three refuges, for example. Could you please explain what is the role of faith in Ajahn Chah's tradition? And if they differ, in what degree is having faith in the Buddha different from having confidence in the teachings? I think they're pretty much the same thing in how we practice with the development of faith and also confidence in the teachings themselves. And the Buddha points to that really. Taking refuge in the Buddha is the same as taking refuge in the Dhamma, is the same as taking refuge in the Sangha. They all kind of meld together in a sense. And the term saddha, S-A-D-D-H-A, saddha, is the term that's often translated as faith or confidence, and confidence. The word, I actually prefer the word confidence in myself because faith has a connotation in the English language as kind of a blind faith, meaning an unexamined faith, just trust me, don't ask questions kind of faith. And the Buddha didn't really suggest or encourage that. So having faith in the enlightenment of the Buddha means that we hear the story, we listen to the teachings that the Buddha gave, we kind of see what it is that he has given us, we put it into practice, and we see for ourselves, and that is what gives us our faith that the Buddha was truly free and was able to discover this and teach a path that leads to that full and complete freedom from suffering, which we could call enlightenment. So we take the teachings and we take the practice that he left for us, and we put them into practice. And as we do that, we develop confidence that, okay, so far anyway, maybe I haven't reached the goal like he says he did, but I'm certainly experiencing less suffering in my life. My habits and tendencies are starting to kind of wane away a little bit. I have some sense that bringing mindfulness and clear awareness accompanied by a strong sense of value of non-harming and integrity and following moral precepts, that these actually make me happier. Well, there you've just gotten a little bit of feedback that what the Buddha experienced for himself and was teaching, actually has validity to it. So you say, okay, well, if that's true, then I don't really have any grounds to doubt that, his full enlightenment was something that I can have confidence in. In a sense, it's a, quote, leap of faith because you haven't experienced full enlightenment yourself. But after you've had some experience and a modicum of sense of release from suffering, then that should be sufficient to say, okay, well, I'm going to keep working on it and keep applying the practices and the reflections and following the teachings, following the advice, as long as it keeps moving in the direction of providing me with a sense of freedom. And so then it becomes confidence. And the more you do it, the more confident you get, and the more you have a sense of faith that, okay, this is something that the Buddha discovered for himself, rediscovered, I guess you would say, and taught it to many, many people who have experienced the full release from suffering that he talks about. So faith, confidence, really mostly the same thing, but it gradually deepens through applying it in your own life and reflecting on it in your own life. Okay, let's see. Dear Ajahn, I have a tenant who rents a room from me. We have a rather harmonious relationship and things go great. However, when she needs something fixed, she reports it with lamentation, complaining that the handyman didn't do a good job last time. He never does a good job. And whatever we fix, she's fine with it until the next thing she wants attended to. She's frustrated, as if things shouldn't break. I've been kind, calm, and attentive, and then her agitation, this expecting perfection and blaming attitude gets to me. She can't see it. She thinks she's so smart and diligent, but can't see that her attitude about it is really bothersome. I've mentioned it to her, but she doesn't get it. I can talk to her as if she was my student, telling her about all that goes wrong all the time and that she's suffering by making an issue out of it, and so on and so forth. But I hold back because I don't want to treat her as if I'm giving her a lesson. I do say softly, things break down, things get old. Then she says, are you frustrated? I say, not yet, hopefully indicating if you keep it up, I could. How do you tell somebody they can point to what is broken and not make an issue out of it in a casual way that is not teacherly? Thank you. Please let Luang Por know that he has been doing fantastically. I very much appreciate him teasing things out the way he does rather than covering more material. Anumodana. Okay, Luang Por, I see you're on the screen there, so hope you heard that. Pardon?
I know who asked.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. You can tell me later. Okay, well, I think what I would do if I were you, which is a very dangerous thing to do, getting into giving people advice. But anyway, you asked. I would just concentrate on your second sentence, which says, we have a rather harmonious relationship and things go great. And be grateful for that, be thankful for that, because there are probably a lot of people who have tenants who they don't really have a rather harmonious relationship with, and things don't usually go great. So, this particular habit of kind of fault-finding that your tenant has with things when they go wrong, I don't know. It's hard to tell from, of course, I'm not in the situation, and it might drive me kind of crazy too if I were there. But, we have to learn how to gently and slowly work with people that we have to interact with in our lives. And, some people have very strong lifelong habits and tendencies that take a lot of time to tease out. Certainly, we experience that here in the monastery. It's sort of like, okay, they're doing that again. Why can't they just see how much suffering they're causing themselves? And if they could see it, then they wouldn't do it. But they can't see it right at this time, and it sounds like your tenant is kind of in that place right now. Is that as much as you try and gently mention something or make a calm, soft reflection that, oh yeah, things break down, things get old, and she doesn't pick it up, well, there's only so much you can do, and I think you rightfully realize that you can't kind of like pound it in, because that's just going to create more resistance. So you do what you can do, and then you just take each situation, I think, as you can, and not make too much of it, and try and pull up a perception of the fact that you generally have a rather harmonious relationship and things go great, and this person probably has a lot of good qualities, and you need to bring those up and remember them too, and kind of just realize that you can't control everything. As long as it's basically working pretty well, there's going to be stuff that people have that they're dealing with, and they're just going to have to make their own way with it, and be the experience the results of their own karma, their own ways of doing with it, until it gets to be the situation where they just get tired of doing it. Ajahn Chah says, we just keep making the same mistake over and over again until we just get tired of doing it, and then we start to let it go and look for alternatives. So it doesn't mean that you don't occasionally make a nice little comment about things get old, things break down, but you're just going to create more suffering for yourself if you dwell on it. And best to just kind of recognize the good things at this point. After doing your best effort, hold it all with a lot of kindness and patience. As Ajahn Sumedho says, patient. The definition of patience is peaceful coexistence with the unpleasant. So we all have to have a lot of patience with the people that we're living with, because they're not all exactly like me. Darn it. So, good luck. Okay, the last question. Dear Venerable, could you please explain if there's an antidote to that painful feeling when a person who is the object of our affection pays attention to person or persons other than me? If it's due to this entrenched sense of self, is it enough to be mindful of its impermanent nature, or is there a way to counteract it, like the 5 hindrances? On the other hand, does it make sense to try to develop mudita towards a person only because they receive attention? Many thanks in advance. Well, it's kind of like it's a little bit of jealousy going on. It's sort of like the feeling of pain when somebody that you, as you say, is the object of your affection, pays attention to somebody else other than you, and this is, if we have a sense of possessiveness, in a sense, like that this person is mine, and they should pay attention to me, then when they don't, you're going to be disappointed. And some of it may be, the way that they are paying attention to somebody else, and how, if it's like to the point of taking action and not respecting a relationship or a bond that you've agreed on between the two of you, then that's something to discuss. You're probably not going to. You probably shouldn't expect that even if you're in a committed relationship, that your partner or yourself is never going to actually feel attraction to or feel a fondness or any kind of appreciation for somebody else. But what you can expect, and what you should expect for yourself as well, is to not act on it, because there's certain natural attractions that occur between people, but if we have the wisdom to see them for just what they are and let them pass, and not engage in entering into unskillful relationships. If we're already in a committed relationship, then that's pretty much what I think is the best you're going to be able to do. And it is a sense of self, a sense of ownership. If it's a wholesome way that this person is paying attention to somebody else, and it's supportive and it's good, then it is appropriate to try to work slowly on saying, oh, okay, well, is there a way that I can experience a sense of appreciation that my friend is offering support and attention to somebody else who might benefit from that. You have to have that confidence or that sense of trust, though, that that's just human beings helping each other, and not getting possessive of that, because in the end, you don't have any control over the eventual path of relationships. They do change over time, but I think you can expect a decent level of fidelity in a relationship, to the point of people not acting in unskillful ways, going against precepts and things like that. And then the more sense of confidence you have that your happiness isn't dependent on exclusive attention from another person, then it won't matter so much, these things that happen in the natural course of human relationships. It's, the kind of the downside of one-on-one intimate relationships is when we become dependent on that fidelity or that presence of another being, and they're 100% they're here for me kind of feeling, and sometimes relationships can get into that kind of, for want of better words, you might want to call codependency. Sort of, you kind of start to build your life around your sense of well-being and your sense of self-confidence around somebody else's adoration of you. Kind of that, they think I'm wonderful, and I know they think I'm wonderful, and so I'll depend on that for my sense of wholeness and goodness. And that's the danger, or the what could be the trap in a one-on-one intimate relationship, is that one becomes dependent on that, and then you don't find that sense of confidence and love, boundless, expansive love that isn't dependent on one other particular being or any beings. It's just a natural state of care and concern for all of humanity, including yourself. And you can find that and discover that and nurture that. And it can be, an intimate relationship, or your partner, a committed partner in your life. They will be part of that, but they're not the whole of that. And if it changes, or when it changes, either through separation or moving on, people moving on, or through death, then there's not that sense of devastation because you've lost that ground as that person being the only source or the primary source of your well-being. So the more you can practice with developing that sense of kindness and compassion and confidence and trust and integrity in your own life, so that it's independent of any one other particular being, then the less these things will be an issue for you.